Hey everybody, it's Nancy Norbeck and I'm back with this week's Creative Pep Talk. And I want to build on something that I talked about last time, though I've talked about it a lot of times. And I realized after our last pep talk that I really haven't explained the magic of doing things in increments of 5 minutes before. So I think that we're overdue. It's time. Last time I talked about how, even if you only have 5 minutes to spend on something, that's enough. If you want to keep your creative momentum going, or if you want to get your creative momentum going, all you need is 5 minutes. Ideally, that would be 5 minutes every day, but life happens. 5 minutes when you can is better than no minutes. Now, obviously that math is obvious, but we often think that 5 minutes doesn't matter. 5 minutes is not enough to do anything, and that is just not true. 5 minutes is time that we spend mentally and possibly physically in that creative process. There is a huge difference between actually spending 5 minutes in that process and wishing that we had spent 5 minutes in it. 5 minutes is enough to keep your momentum going even when you are super busy, and that is all you have to do. If you have ever gotten sidetracked from a project, you know if you're not spending time in it, and I'll speak here as an author, I know my characters stop talking to me after a while if I don't have any time to spend with them. When I do have time to spend with them, they talk to me all the time. They talk to me in the middle of meetings. They talk to me at the grocery store while I'm driving down the street. But if I stop spending that time with them, they stop talking. And it can be difficult to get back into that because you sit down and finally you think, oh, I have 2 hours. I'm going to sit down and write. And nothing comes because they have stopped communicating with you. Whereas if I had spent 5 minutes every day playing with the ideas, writing little bits of dialogue, anything at all, odds are they wouldn't have stopped talking to me. So it's one of these ideas that sounds too good to be true, but it really isn't. Now, you're not going to write 20 pages in 5 minutes. Let's not exaggerate here. But there is magic in the 5 minutes. The 5 minutes is enough to create or build momentum. It's enough to keep us going. And here's the thing that a lot of people don't know about the creative process, which is this. If you are thinking about the creative process, you are in the creative process. Whether you are actually putting words on the page, paint on a canvas, whatever it is that you do, when you are thinking about the creative process, especially if you let yourself get a little lost in that thought process, you are in it. But even if you're just telling a friend, this is what I'm working on, you are in it. Your brain will start sparking. If you don't give your brain the opportunity to spark on anything, it's not gonna. So, don't underestimate the power of 5 minutes. It is a tried and true tool. It will work for you even if you don't think that it will, if you just give it a chance. Now, we tend to think that it's impossible to do anything useful in 5 minutes, and that's part of where our skepticism comes from. But the fact is that 5 minutes can be much more useful than 2 hours. Especially if you're pressuring yourself to do a lot in those 2 hours, if you have left everything until the last minute and your brain seizes up, if you haven't been in the creative process. So I would highly recommend, if you find 5 minutes difficult to believe, first of all, that you give it a try, because that's really the only way you're going to find out for sure for yourself. But I would also encourage you to sit down with your journal and think about, what do I believe creative progress needs to look like? What do I think that it has to be? Because you may find that you really have some wild idea that you have to have days on end and that it's got to look a certain way and your progress has to be a certain way or produce a certain thing or whatever. Or for some reason you say that's not progress or it's not useful or it's not good enough. When in fact, if you're paying attention and you're willing to dive in even for 5 minutes, you can get farther than you expect. You can hit little breakthroughs. One of the things that's magical about 5 minutes is that we don't tend to attach high expectations to it. I've talked before in a pep talk about lowering your expectations, and the magic of lowering your expectations is that it frees up your brain. When you have high expectations, we have very defined ideas of what these things should and shouldn't look like, and it traps us and it keeps us blocked. So 5 minutes lowers the pressure, it lowers the expectations, and it keeps you in that process, even though it's just a couple of minutes. So in your journal, think about what your expectations look like. What do you think progress looks like? What do you think actually doing your work has to look like? You might be surprised at what you discover. And you could also ask yourself, why do I think 5 minutes sounds ridiculous or unlikely to work, or, whatever it is that you're telling yourself about it. But the best way to find out whether or not 5 minutes is going to work for you is just to go do it. So that's my recommendation. And I hope that you'll think about it. I hope that this helps you understand how 5 minutes a day can work for you. And by the way, if you are trying to get back into the process and you're trying to really lower your expectations and you start making progress in that 5 minutes and you're having fun, nothing says you have to stop unless you have some kind of outside deadline saying you only have 5 minutes. If you hit 5 minutes and you want to keep going, keep going. There's nothing wrong with that. That's part of the magic of 5 minutes. It's enough to get you started and get you in that mode, and you're off to the races. But it's important to understand that you need to tell yourself that you only have to do 5 minutes. It keeps the pressure low, and it lets everything else start to click inside your head so that the work that you want to do can actually happen. So I highly recommend that you give 5 minutes a try. If you're a journaler, check out those questions or whatever other question might have occurred to you while you've been listening to this. Either way, seeing is believing. So I hope you'll sit down and see what it does for you. And as always, I would love to hear how it goes for you. So there's lots of ways to contact me, from social media to my email. They're all available in the links below this episode in your podcast app. So let me know. And with that, have fun, and I'll see you next time.